Welcome to Camera Shake, where we bring you the insider scoop on all things photography and videography, giving you a unique opportunity to stay ahead of the curve. We've spent literally hundreds of hours interviewing some of the most renowned photographers and industry leaders, giving you access to knowledge and expertise that's not available anywhere else. As always, I'm your host, Kirsten Nuts, and if you're like me and you enjoy free podcasts and YouTube content, you can become a supporter of the show by buying us a coffee over on buymeacoffee.com/camerashake to help us create more exciting episodes for you. Of course, you're more than welcome to say no hard feelings. Just know that your support really does make a difference. Also, before we get into today's conversation, make sure you sign up for our newsletter over at camerashakepodcast.com for exclusive photography tips, tricks, and the latest gear updates. Now, without further ado, let's give it up for today's special guest, inside the studio, the CEO of Click Backdrops and Fresh Academy Studio, a true expert in the business of photography, Charlie Kaufman.
Charlie, good to see you. It's been a while. We met a little while ago at Imaging USA in Dallas.
We did indeed.
How have you been since then?
Busy. It's non-stop. You met me in my busy period. So January to May is normally 6 trips to the US and about 3 or 4 expos in the UK. So it is our mad time of year. Now we've thankfully slowed down a little bit until it all starts off again. Later on in the year, I believe 3 more road shows and Salon de la Photo in Paris.
Because you're doing a lot of stuff. I follow you on Facebook and on social media, and I see you everywhere at any time. Like, you've been to Imaging USA, you've been to WPPI, you've done virtually all the shows.
This year we did WPPI, we did Imaging, we did Shutterfest, Texas School, SPAC, Sync, 6 UK road shows, the Society's Convention in London. We still have 3 more road shows, our own expo, Click Live Light in September, and then Salon de la Photo in Paris, and then we take a breather before we start again. And that's less than we used to do. Last year we had a show in Canada, we had NAB and SPOA as well. We just couldn't fit them all in this year.
Isn't next year, if I'm not mistaken, Society's clashes with Imaging or something?
Not a huge clash. I land from Imaging and set up the stand for the Societies the next day.
Right.
So it has happened in the past that we literally land and go from the airport straight to the Societies set up, and it starts the next day. I think next year it's 2 days apart. It's just what happens. You know, everyone's fighting for dates. The US market doesn't pay too much attention to what happens in the UK. Their shows are on a different scale usually, and they're all fighting for that slot in the calendar that they want something to happen. But it is, I mean, this year alone, we had Shutterfest back to back with Texas School. So you literally fly through from one to the other. Last year we had SPAC in Vegas, flew through the night to go to Imaging USA, landed at just after 9 a.m. and had the stand set up and started trading at 11. It just is what it is. You know, it's not an easy thing to do, but as you said, you see us everywhere, and you see us everywhere because we have to get everywhere. You know, I don't like hiding behind my computer and a keyboard. I like being customer. I mean, with a face like this, I have to be customer facing, right? So I like to be in front of the customers, and I love traveling. Yeah. I love meeting photographers like you do from all over the world. I'm only upset the Photokina in Germany was a victim of the COVID, because that was one of my favourite shows of the year. You know, great city, great people, and you really met people from the whole world came to that, and it's just a shame that it hasn't been replaced yet.
And that, you know, I feel exactly the same, because when I first got into the world of expos, it was just after the pandemic, when Photokina had announced that they were going to shut down forever. Now, because I have family in Cologne, so that would have been ideal for me. But hey, the one thing I've always wondered, you know, when I see you like at Imaging or at WPPI, what do you do with your kit? Like, how do you get all your stuff over there?
Funnily, you should say that. So we're very fortunate to have some very good friends in America. So we have a great guy called Leonard, who's an expat who lives out in Vegas. So he has some of my stuff there all year round, which he uses our backdrops and then brings them to the Las Vegas-based shows. We have great ambassador and friend, Shoot Your Photography in Texas. And this year, he did the remarkable thing, because imaging was in Texas and Texas school obviously was in Texas. He literally drives 6.5 or 7 hours each way, brings all his backdrops that he has, his remote control backdrop systems, imaging. He even brought tables and chairs. He sets the whole thing up for me, goes home, comes back 5 days later, collects it all. Why? Because he believes in giving back and he likes helping people. Doesn't do it for any reason, doesn't get paid to do it. He does it because he's a great guy. And that's Shoot Your Photography in Corpus Christi. Just one of life's givers in a way. And he's got a fantastic business, studio portrait business, won tons of awards, and he's one of our ambassadors, himself and his other half, Nora. So the rest of the time we ship the stuff out there, and we normally sell everything on the booth, so we don't have to bring it back with us. And if we have to bring it back, we have to bring it back. It's not the end of the world. It is funny almost every time, because if you recall, we have our big sample books that have 200 or so backdrops, like just over A4 size in each. And we get stopped by every customs officer on the way out, on the way back, when they see this book in our hand luggage with a metal cover. They always inspect. But I mean, that's every flight.
Yeah.
But we won't check them. They have to stay with us. They're too valuable. Because if we lose those, then we're stuck.
Or people know you as the face of Click Backdrops and, of course, Fresh Academy Studios, which is where we are today. But you're also a working photographer.
Yeah.
Beyond everything else.
Yeah. I've got 4 shoots on Saturday, 3 makeovers and a boudoir. I have 2 family shoots and a superhero shoot on Sunday. I will do all the shoots myself, and then I'll do all the viewings straight after myself. Multi-genre photographer for 35 years. I think one of the reasons we have so much trust in the industry, whether it be our marketing company or our backdrop company, is because I practice what I preach. So all the marketing things we do, we have the same customers in our studio as our members get. And the backdrops, as you can see, we use them. This backdrop's pre-launch, speaker wall 1. We produced that backdrop, we made it, then we thought the speakers and amps were a bit too big in test shoot, so we've now shrunk them down by 25% to make them more realistic. I like everything being realistic. Because we are one of the few backdrop companies owned by photographers, we are anal when it comes to scale and things looking ultra realistic. It's a big thing for me. Working photographer, and I still love what I do. I pick up the camera. I'm blessed to be sponsored by Fujifilm. The studio is sponsored by Lincrom, and we've got some great toys around here from our friends at Westcott and various other brands and Smoke Ninja and things, because people like the fact that we use all these things and credit them, because we're shooting a lot, and when the studio's not being used, then we're shooting content for the backdrop company.
Yeah.
So I'm always shooting in a way, definitely not as much as I used to. I used to do 1,500 shoots a year in the studio, pre-COVID and going back a few years. We could sometimes do 40 or 50 shoots a week. We've scaled that right back due to our other commitments now.
How have things changed for the studio since the pandemic? Did the pandemic have like a major impact? Did it change the way you do things?
Of course. It slowed us all down. First of all, for me on a personal basis, being, to quote world famous photographer Kenneth Linger, who calls me Turbo Brain, and he's known me since I was a kid in the industry. I never stopped. It was continuous. So when the pandemic happened, I remember when it did happen, we were actually at WPPI and everyone was talking about Corona, and my best mate Simon was with me and he was drinking a Corona beer and everyone's going, woo, Corona beer. And we all said, yeah, okay, everything will be back to normal in a couple of weeks. And then I got a phone call from my wife saying, have you been to Bath and Body Works yet? I said, yeah. You bought the hand gels because she likes these little scented hand sanitizers. I said, yes. She goes, well, you better go and buy some more because they're rationing them in the UK and we can't get them. I said, what? And I went and bought 70 more. I think we've still got some of them from that hoard. And of course it changed everything because first of all, it stopped us all in our tracks. And I'd never been stopped. I was working 7 days a week, weeks on end, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. I could have taken days off, but then all I'd be doing is working on my phone anyway. Funnily enough, I don't have a computer at home. but I still have my phone. So customers are getting the response from me personally all 16, 17 hours a day. COVID stopped us. It then made people scared of interacting with other people. So it slowed our whole business model down. So when we could open periodically, we would book one customer in the morning, wipe everything down. We were taking their blimmin' temperatures as they were walking in. It was awful, awful. And then we'd have another customer 2 or 3 hours later, then another one at the end of the day. And the funny thing is, our average sales went up. So the high-paced volume we used to do, we were actually doing similar money with half the customers. And that's how I've maintained it now. So we haven't gone back to the big volume. But of course, COVID, I mean, our marketing efforts and the marketing promotions and the gift companies we work with here in the UK, we're still about 65% down on pre-COVID. From an independent business owner, people, so studios, for instance, lots of studios closed down. Our group had been trading 25 years when COVID happened. It's now 31 years or 22, 26 years or whatever. So I had some photographers in my group that had been on board from the beginning, who were in their 40s then, who just decided in lockdown, you know what, this is my exit. This is no point reopening. We had 2 or 3 retire. We had studios change the way they work and just went out of an industry or just specialised in one. So we lost a few members and gained some new ones as well. But what's really hurt the photographer from a business point of view, and it's the elephant in the room, because unless you had huge financial backing or a stable financial position, for the businesses like us that were in fast growth and borrowing to our international expansions, we built our own factory. Funnily enough, we bought our second large format printer the month before the pandemic came in. So this is a printer which is tens of thousands of pounds, and at the time we were flying business. January and February we were already up substantially on January, February the year before, and the company said, are you going to do a normal lease over 5 years like you did for the first one? I said, you know what, no. It was an ex-demo unit, so it was a bit cheaper. I said, let's just pay it in 3, and I paid a third up front, and then they delivered it. It came on a juggernaut, and they craned it in. I paid the other third, and the plan was to pay the last third. It was just after the photography show, because I thought, yeah, great, no problem. I'm going to do 30, 40,000 in sales on backdrops at the photography show. I'll just pay the balance. And obviously, the 2 weeks after the printer got delivered, we were in lockdown. So the photography show was cancelled.
Yeah.
It went virtual, which was a no-starter from the beginning. I never do well on anything virtual. And that hurt, because in the UK, we had our bounce-back loans, we had help with salaries, but you end up borrowing more and more, and we're still now paying back debts from COVID.
Yeah.
So it is a really tough time, and a lot of studios just thought, you know what, I'm going to go and get a job.
And you were in a lucky position, in a sense, in comparison to, compared to other people like myself, in the sense that you had already had a diversified business when the pandemic hit. In my case, I'd built everything on one pillar, which was at the time was a conference business. And so, of course, if anybody told me in 2019 that there was going to be a thing that would wipe out the conference and convention business in one swift swoop, I would have said, not in a million years.
You're 100% right. And I know a lot of wedding photographers, and I know people in the wedding industry. I know wedding organisers that were doing Ubering and were doing food deliveries. And I totally respect how they pivoted and moved. I've always tried to diversify. It's the same way, funnily enough, I use the same logic in my business, in all my businesses. For example, there are photographers out there, a lot of them in the US and some here, that only go to shoot 1 or 2 customers a week with a £2,000 or £3,000 or $4,000 average sale. And when I speak to them, they go, oh, yeah, we're fully booked at the moment. I say, fully booked? Yeah, we have 2 clients this week. And I would always laugh, because I've done 23, 24 family shoots in a day, okay, in the history of the company. So that's the way they worked, okay? Now, my logic with that has always been the same. If one of those people has the flu, they've lost half their turnover that week.
Yeah.
So I've always spread my bets with customers in the studio, i.e. I will have 8 or 9 shoots in a week, not 2. Okay, I'm happier with a lower average to get the same money, because if one of my customers gets the flu, I've still got 6 or 7 shoots. I then diversify the genres of my business. So those photographers that only do one genre limit themselves in the respect that, let's say, that genre goes out of fashion a little bit. We've seen genres go up and down in fashions. I then take it one stage further and I diversify the entire business. So I used to be just a marketing company for photographers, 1994. Then I built my own studio with one of our members, Richard Szymanski. I proved myself so much to him at the age of 20 to 21 that he invested in me, and we built a studio together, which became 2 studios together. And he's still part of the group 30 odd, years later. It's incredible. And then I diversified again into the backdrops. I have taken it further, but then I was in the hair industry, the beauty industry, the pet industry with our marketing, and none of them worked as successfully as photography. So I scaled it back just to photography-related businesses. So when COVID hit, my studio was shut. The marketing business was shut because every other studio was shut. Thankfully, we had our backdrop business. While studios were shut around the world, a lot of photographers took the time to renovate. Some of them used their loans and their grants that they got to buy backdrops and to put roller systems in because they were also stopped and had time to actually look at what they had and build upon it. So thankfully that carried us a little bit. But if I hadn't diversified and I only had the one studio business or the one marketing business, I wouldn't be talking to you today from here, because I would never have been able to stay in business. Yeah. And the upsetting and you asked about the COVID, the thing that scared me the most, if we had closed down our marketing side of our business, it would have taken around 25 UK studios down with us because there were some very historic members that relied almost 100% on the business we generated for them. And we actually did a poll on our group at the time that COVID was coming out. How significant would the closure of Click be to your business? And a third said disappointed, but would get by. A third say it wouldn't affect us too much. And a third said we wouldn't survive. So added pressure.
That's huge, yeah.
But that's me. I self-inflict a lot of pressure on myself. Maybe that was what the quadruple heart bypass was for, right, which happened right in the middle of COVID as well.
Right.
So I even planned that when I was closed. Perfect time.
Hey, let me just jump in real quick to tell you about the amazing sponsor of this episode, Platypod. Platypod offers innovative camera support systems designed to unleash your creativity. With their stable, versatile, and portable solutions, you can capture stunning shots like never before. And I'm not just saying that. As the host of the Camera Shake podcast, I can personally vouch for Platypod's incredible products. They've become an integral part of the show. In fact, I'm surrounded by various Platypod products holding up lights, cameras, microphones, and so on. It's really helped to transform the way I make the show and the way I shoot at home, in the studio, and on location. But don't just take my word for it. Explore Platypod's website at www.platypod.com to discover their range of products, including the Platypod Extreme, Platypod tripod heads, and the brand new handle, of course. Make sure to follow Platypod on Instagram and Facebook at Platypod Tripods for exclusive updates, tips, and giveaways. By choosing Platypod, you're not only investing in your photography, but you're also supporting the Camera Shake Photography Podcast. Thanks again to Platypod, our amazing sponsor. Platypod, where innovation never sleeps.
So again, we talked a little bit about click backdrops, and we're going to get back into that in a minute because there's so much to cover. It's a super interesting business. It's a super interesting thing in general. Let's talk a little bit about the marketing business. You explained it a little bit in the sense that you create marketing for other studios.
Yeah. So in 1992, so I'm going back a while, I was working in a studio, a very luxurious studio. It was mainly a wedding business at the time. And I said to him, why is the studio not being used for portraiture? I mean, I was 17 at the time. Well, we do the occasional shoot. I said, but you've got the most beautiful studio, one of the most beautiful studios in the UK. It was, gold taps, marble floors, Italian furniture. It was his flagship studio for his dream of having the flagship studio in his market. But there was 1 or 2 shoots a week. So I had the idea at the time to offer all of his past customers a free portrait session with a free 8x10 print. And he went nuts. I can't do anything free. Don't you realize who I am? Look at the reputation I've built up. If I do it for free, you're going to devalue my whole brand. And that's why I came up with the idea of freemium. So let's come up with a premium idea that we can offer someone something free without devaluing the photographer. There was no digital cameras, obviously, at the time. There was no computers, there was no internet, nothing. But at the time, Kodak was bringing out a piece of equipment called the Kodak Prism. And you probably haven't even heard of it. It looked like an auto cue, where your Hasselblad was up here, shooting on 120 film, 12 shots. It shot through this glass prism, and underneath was a Sony 3-chip digital camera, which captured everything the Hasselblad does on a tiny little 3-inch floppy disk, I presume. You would then be able to take that little disk into a player, not a computer, in the viewing room with a TV and show the customers what was just created on the film before you even developed the film. It was the first time I'd managed to do instant viewing. Okay, because normally before that we were using slides and transproofing. So there's always a couple of days when the slides were being made at the lab before they could do it. Some studios could develop them on site, but it was a real rarity. So I said, David, get the Prism. He was a huge Kodak film user at the time. So we managed to blag the Prism for a month for free to test it. We were the first people in the UK to have it. And that was my excuse. That was my freemium reason to give away a portrait session and an 8x10 that he would normally charge in those days about 80 or 90 pounds for free. And I was on commission. I'd never worked for him full time. I was always self-employed. I did my own weddings and bar mitzvahs and things at the side. And I was on 20% of whatever I brought to his business above his business. And he thought that was a safe bet. I was 17, 18 years old. What was I going to do? I was just before I was 19 when this was here. It was my 3rd year working for him. And I learned a huge lot. He was an incredible, and is an incredible photographer. So I got 2 or 3 of my girlfriends on the phone. We went through all of his past customers. David's doing free portraiture this month only. It's a free shoot. It's a free 8x10. And I think we did about 212 shoots in a month. That's without working Saturdays or Friday afternoons because he was closed for Sabbath. And I remember like yesterday, we turned over £37,000. This is 30 plus years ago. And for me, it was a huge payday. I mean, I wasn't even 20. I'd earned £7,000, equivalent of maybe £25,000 now, 30 odd years ago. He didn't see eye to eye on my commission structure at that point. And it goes to say that we parted ways. But I learned a very valuable lesson. And the lesson I learned there, which I've adopted and been doing for 31 years, is very simple. If you can give clients an excuse to have a gift without devaluing the gift itself, it's a great way of bringing people through the door. So the minute I left, I told a few other photographers that I knew about my concept. I had an office with 1 member staff and 1 desk in a serviced office block in northwest London. That grew to having 1/3 of the downstairs of the building within a year with 100 studios. And funnily enough, we were doing as much money then as we are now. It was a boom time. I was too young to appreciate it and made a huge amount of mistakes along the way, as we do. You know, I had no qualifications. I'm dyslexic. I got rich too quick and didn't know what to do with anything. You know, I was an idiot. And I'd be very happy to confess that. But we still have some of those studios that were on board 30 years still with us today. We were launching new Kodak papers. We were launching new cameras. Anything that was new, we were calling up all their old customers. Unbelievable news. We're just trying out this new paper. Come in and see us for a free shoot. At this day and age, photographers didn't even have databases of their customers. We were taking their phone numbers off neg bags in some cases. And we would send a driver to their studio in Manchester. We'd pick up their physical records and we'd phone them all. That evolved into, we were the first people in the UK really to do unmanned exhibitions in health clubs, in David Lloyd, in macro cash and carry centres. And in those days, it would be a prize draw. Enter this competition to win a 20x16 canvas, and every entrant gets a free print and a free session. We would get thousands upon thousands of people filling in these things. Now, this day and age, if you put a stand like that in Costco, for instance, you'd probably get some chewing gum through the slot, or, you know, go and do one written on the piece of paper. We'd get maybe 1 or 2 entries. In those days, it was printing money. And then we'd have 30 telesales staff, 30. I've got 3 now. I used to have 30 telesales staff calling those bookings. There were still no computers. So we had individual ring binders of diary dates for every studio in the group, 101 studios at our peak. We had the headed note paper of every single studio. I'd have an admin team of 5 people whose job was just being, we've made an appointment, telesales person's made the appointment, they'd put it on a booking card, they'd give it to the admin person, he or she would do the letter on that headed note paper of that photographer, that would go to the customer, a booking card would go to the photographer because we had no email. It was a manual process, and I still don't know how we did it. Over 250 bookings a day we were doing then. That evolved into national promotions with the Times newspaper. We have had front pages of every newspaper in the UK. That then evolved into the gift experience industry in 2006. Now we have Red Letter Days, Virgin Experiences, buygift.com, etc., where they're selling our packages. We have our own gift site, Clip Portrait Experiences. That's evolved into online, where we have a partnership with a substantial data company called Fan Finders, who own a website called Your Baby Club, which actually is one of the biggest in the UK of attracting mums-to-be and young mums. And they see our portrait promotion on there from Your Baby Club. So again, not devaluing the brand of the photographer. And the nice thing is all of our marketing, and this is the key, is anonymous to the photographer's name.
Right.
So we've had some of the highest profile photographers in the world be part of our group, and no one knows they're part of it until that customer, is booked into their studio. So it was the same with the hair industry. We had some of the world's top hair salons on board, but they were still quiet Monday to Thursday. But they couldn't be seen to themselves to be doing any discounted offers, but this was anonymous. So we could have them in Cosmo magazine or Glamour or, any of these, top Santé magazines where they couldn't afford to buy a page in there themselves. We would have a whole page promotion in there, and they'd still get all the local business. And it's the same with the Your Baby Club. Photographers subscribe per postcode, and in real time, they get the name, address, phone number, date of birth or due date of the local mum in the areas they've chosen that have just entered that promotion. So it's no different to what they can do themselves on Facebook, apart from the fact that if you keep doing offers under your own name on Facebook or the likes of that sort of thing, you can devalue your brand. This is anonymous. No one knows you're part of it. And if anyone says, how could you do it? Well, we're part of this big group. That's what we do. It's allowed photographers to increase their prices because sometimes a single photographer is always very shy on what they charge here in the UK especially. But being part of a big group has given them the confidence to build up their prices, and they fall back on, we're part of a big group. That's just what we do. And we distribute, I think it's 1,200 to 1,300 of these new prospect, what we call data leads, per week to our photographers in the UK. Now, if I can let you into a tiny little secret, and I don't know when this is going to be aired, but a tiny little secret is our friends at Your Baby Club have been operating in the US. And they've already amassed a database of 1.2 million new mums in the US. And we have the rights to that market too. So very, very shortly, photographers, friends of Click, backdrop customers, because it's all incestuously linked. Okay?
Of course it is.
Charlie's Charlie. People have confidence in us. They'll go with what we're doing. Yeah. They'll have the opportunity to secure their zip codes exclusively. And that's also a very important thing. As you know, being close to me, we are in a way could be competitor headshot studios. But if you could lock out every other photographer in your city by securing your zip codes first, imagine the power that is. So you've got all these thousands upon thousands of new mums. Literally, I'm pregnant. Oh my God, let me research my pregnancy. Let me find every pregnancy website there is. I'm signing up to a promotion for a beautiful portrait experience, etc., etc., etc. We get their data and send it only to that one photographer. On Facebook, every photographer in the area will be fighting for the same customer. With this, whoever's got that zip code, they're the only people that can get the data. And that launches imminently. I will be putting some testers out there. We have been in the US market before. So when you have a sizable marketing company in the UK, we've been asked for over 25 years to bring our marketing efforts to the US. And the funny thing is, and how incestuous my businesses are, about 16 years ago, I actually launched our main Click group, which is the gift experiences and all this sort of thing, and making bookings for photographers. I actually launched that into the US market. And we exhibited at Imaging USA and WPPI, some PPA affiliate shows in Pasadena, in Boston, etc. And we actually recruited 450 studios to do their marketing for them in 44 states, I believe, for either portrait, makeover, or both. We signed up the two biggest gift experience companies in America at the time, who were doing go-karting and wine tasting and spa treatments, but none of them were doing photography offers. And I had total exclusivity for the whole of the US for a year with them as a trial. I'd already planned what yacht I was going to buy, what swimming pool I was going to have put in my new mansion, because I obviously thought naively that if I was doing 50 to 80 bookings a day in the UK with 80 or 90 studios, 500 studios in America, with a market that had never been hit before, with the biggest gift companies in America, I was already planning a retirement and an exit from the industry, and it just didn't work. The market just didn't appeal to it. We literally were making 2 or 3 bookings a week, and in the end, we just let the group fizzle. You know, people hadn't paid huge membership fees and things, so we just let the group fizzle. A little bit of egg on our face, to be totally honest with you. I was really disappointed. I employed a telesales team out there. We were ready for it. But the silver lining was when I was going back and forth to all these US shows, and you can imagine I was doing a lot of them, I was noticing at the trade shows some of the busiest expo stands at the shows were the backdrop companies. And when I looked back at my own studio group in the UK, because I had 2 or 3 studios myself at that point, the only backdrops we could have were either paper, or we built sets, or we imported from the US, or we got something which was of very low quality from, a cheap online source that I won't mention. There was nothing in that mid-market, and a lot of photographers in the UK didn't want to spend $3,000 importing a hand-painted backdrop from America. So I spoke to a couple of the backdrop companies there. We also had none of the newborn baby props here really in the UK at the time. The little wraps, the hair bonnets and things. We didn't have it. You could only buy it online, and half the time you'd get lucky and half the time as you were let down. It was the wrong colour, wrong size, etc. So I came back to the UK and I approached, I believe it was 3 or 4 top newborn photographers who were also entrepreneurial. And I said, look, I've got this great idea. Here are the contacts. Here's the business cards of the backdrop companies, the prop companies in America. They're happy to pay you a great margin. Why don't you start doing this? I'm a marketing company. I promote it to all my members. One had even started a prop business, but only in a whole box scenario, nothing individual. I said, look, there's no longevity in that. Well, I was proven right. It lasted a very short time. I said, here you go. No one wanted to touch it. So going back to my roots of an entrepreneur and a salesman, I thought, you know what, sod them. I'll do it myself. I had no inclination whatsoever to expand to the US for the backdrop company. So what do they need me for? There's 6 or 7 backdrop companies at every show in the US. So we started and launched. I remember like yesterday, we launched at the Society's convention. My stand was so busy that people were nearly fainting from being squashed on the stand. It was insane. People were thanking us and cuddling us for bringing this product to marketplace. And we only had 2 backdrops on offer, 5x5 and a 5x8 in feet, in vinyl only. And the only backdrop that came in an acrylic carry case, a couple of 100 designs from day one. And they were all made by us in the UK. The props were imported from the US and China. And we then went to the photography show a couple of months later. We had to send staff back to London from Birmingham 3 times to get more stock because we didn't have vehicles big enough to carry it all in. And it exploded from there to the biggest prop company in the UK within a year by an Olympic mile. And we didn't even have a website at the time. I didn't believe in a website at the time because I thought, you know what, we're doing all the shows. And I took the baby props at that point in the first year or 2, Dubai, South Africa, Russia, everywhere. But I didn't bother going back to America because I thought they don't need me. And then some American photographers were coming over to the UK shows and they're saying, Charlie, why aren't these backdrops in the US? I said, well, you've got loads of backdrops. He goes, no, these are better. And now 80% of our whole market is backdrops. I dropped all the baby props during COVID for a myriad of reasons. One, I needed more space. Two, it was getting physically difficult bringing all of those all over the world wherever we went. As you can imagine, one wrap can have 15 colours, and it was a nightmare to do on the scale we were wanting to do it. So we sold that to another prop business in the UK because a few had spouted up since we started. And the backdrops has become the fastest growing part of Click. But it's incestuous, you see. The busier my marketing company is, the more money we make for photographers, the more backdrops they buy. The busier my studio is, the more training days I can put on, the more content I do, which means we then sell more backdrops. It all works hand in hand. And that's why we're really excited for the backdrop business in the US, because it's such a huge market. I speak the language. Our busiest show financially is still Salon de la Photo in Paris, where we physically take the most sales. But I have to sit behind 4 or 5 of our French photographer friends who come and sell for us because I don't speak French. I speak literally 2 or 3 words. So I have to wait to the occasional customer that speaks good enough English to communicate. And the rest of it, I sit there on my hands, desperate to do my thing.
And that's what they invented Duolingo for. Yeah,
well, I've just got the hang around English, all right? So I've tried, it's parlez-vous anglais, that's it. You're quite right. I'm waiting, hopefully by October, the AI little recorder apps are going to be good enough that we're going to get a couple of those, and Gary and I are going to try a couple of those, because they are getting pretty quick and instant and offline. So we'll have a go with that, but it's still not as good as a French-speaking person having a proper conversation in real time. So it all worked hand in hand. So the backdrop business now, as I said, 80% of our sales are the US. The US photographers love our product. We now have a factory in the US as well. So we have our British-made products, which are our Pro Fabric backdrops, which you can see here and here. This is our portable clicky product. We have our vinyls, as you can see on the floor. We've still stayed true to our vinyl. But photographers, again, in the US, kept saying to us, Charlie, we love your designs. We love dealing with you. That's one of the big things. People like dealing with us. From a marketing point of view, from a backdrop point of view, from a studio point of view, we come across ethical and friendly.
Which I think is, I don't want to say it's unique to the photography industry, but it's certainly a hallmark of the photography industry in my experience, because, dealing with manufacturers and with companies in general, I found that, the human connection plays such an incredibly important role, especially in this industry.
To me, it's everything. It is absolutely, I still take everything too personally. I take everything to heart. I put my barriers up if there's a problem with anything, because I'm so upset it's happened. If it was just Mr. Corporate big shots and a customer gets a backdrop that's damaged, I'd literally either say tough and just send a new one, or I'm always trying to find out how and why it's happened and what can we do, and try and always go above and beyond, which is one of the reasons that my team have told me for years on our website. We do have a website now, and it's being improved all the time. And we've got a new one coming out, hopefully for November, December time, which will be completely new, which will be awesome. They want me to have an AI chatbot thing, and I refuse to have it. If photographers right now, anywhere in the world, email in through our website or go onto the chat on the website, they're getting me personally. The phone number on the website is my direct line. And while I physically can handle all the inquiries I get, and I'm online 17 hours a day, 7 days a week, believe it or not, we get Christmas Day, we'll get an inquiry, I'll deal with it on Christmas Day. Because I believe that the customer service is what sets us apart. People like the banter, they like the way we bounce off ideas and each other. And what I tell you, what they do like is that we are photographers that are shooting with our products and genuinely like our products. There are backdrops we design and never go to market, because we print them and go, oh, that's crap. And then there's other ones like Studio Loft that Gary designed. I said, that's awful. I hate that. I'm never going to use that. It's one of my favourite backdrops. Because until it's printed nice and big and, shooting on it, you don't always know.
Well, this is the thing I like about you, because we had this conversation a couple of weeks ago, and I remember you telling me, when you have an idea, you create an image, you blow it up.
It can be instant.
Yeah, it can be instant, exactly.
It can be literally instant. We don't muck about with that. I mean, when I'm traveling, I take I think it's the CM5, my Fujifilm camera, my little camera. If I see a wall, I mean, you won't get it on this shot, but when you do your B-roll, you'll see over there's a wall backdrop called Cadiz doorway or Cadiz arch. I shot that on vacation in Cadiz. If I like something, I'll just photograph it and it becomes a backdrop. We did some incredible shots in the back alleys of Chicago, for instance, where you would never take a client. It physically wouldn't be safe enough to do so, especially a prom client or a senior. There were syringes and rats. There were syringes on the floor and rats running around our ankles when we were photographing this alley. In fact, the hotel specifically said to Gary, when he was doing a photo walk, do not go in this area, this area, this way. And that's exactly where we went, because it was great with 15 photographers or 20 photographers in tow. We just thought it would be, safety in numbers. But we shot some great backdrops there. We then digitally make them right and make sure they're exactly as we want, maybe take the syringes out, blow them up to 140 square feet and produce a backdrop. And then a photographer in Boston can have that Chicago scene in his or her studio and create some incredibly lifelike shots without going outside the studio door. So it's just a fun thing to do. But we can go from concept. My good friend of mine is in Malaysia at the moment, ex-business partner here, and he's doing some commercial photography, shooting on these lay flat panels. And I remember, like yesterday, he sent me this garbled video, about 2 minutes. Hi Charlie, Nick here. You doing these lay flats for a corporate customer. Look how crap these are. They're peeling off, they're flimsy. I know you could make something much better than that. Within 4 days, we had the logo for Pro Flats. We had the complete costings, designs. Gary did some incredible, I think we've got 24 designs already. We did test shoots on them in the studio, on location, at my son's food truck. He put chocolate sauce all over them. They wiped off. They haven't even gone on the website yet. We're still testing. We then took them to the Wales and West photography show where we had it set up. People go, OMG, I'll buy. We hadn't even got the prices sorted yet. We were selling them. And now they'll go live probably in a month or so. But from him saying, look at this concept, to us improving upon it, making it better, and going to market was 3 days.
Wow.
Big corporate could never do that.
Yeah.
It's handy being a little company sometimes.
Absolutely. This is the speed of, the reactionary speed, so to say. It's a huge difference. What are the sort of the most popular backdrop choices at the moment? Is it sort of a fashion thing where things go in and out of fashion, or do you create the latest trend?
It's definitely a fashion thing.
Right.
So when we started Click Backdrops originally, and I was having this conversation with my dad the other day because it's quite funny. Because he's retail his whole life, we actually got closer as a father-son relationship when I had Click Backdrops, because it was the only part of my business he actually understood. Buy and sell.
Yeah.
That's that. No disrespect to him, he's a great salesperson, but he wasn't a marketing person, or he didn't know the IT side of things. Had a product, sold it. And in fact, my mum and dad, until they weren't well enough, were working at my Birmingham show and my London show. They had their own customers. I take them away. It's like a little holiday, time to be together. It was some of my favourite moments with them on the trade show stands. And we used to sell tons of damask wallpaper backdrops. We used to sell tons of a backdrop called Blue Door, loads of panels. Panels we still sell, but we've evolved them heavily. But the damask wallpapers, maybe 1 or 2 a year, I would sell 10 or 20 a show.
Wow. Okay.
They've just gone out. Just things go out. Brick backdrops are not selling that much, so much at the moment. Headshot backdrops, school backdrops are selling incredibly well. We're blessed to have about 20 signature creators. People like Gary Hughes, Frank Dorhoff, Anna Brand, Ellie Cassidy, Carly Sellers. There's loads of them, and there's loads of new ones coming online. Lauren Bennett Tippins. So I'm going to forget some, so I'm not going to mention everybody on purpose. But thanks to all of them who are designing for us as well. Jessica McGovern's just brought out a range specifically for equine and dog portraiture. So, what does she want? Well, she'll design it, we'll make it. But we also do a lot of custom backdrops. So we work with some very big school photographers that want a backdrop unique to them.
Right.
So they'll either send me the artwork, or we will come up with the artwork, and we guarantee that no other photographer will have that design. And then we can make that in almost any size for them. And quick as well. We've, for the TV and film industry in the UK, we've had people phone us at 9 a.m. Backdrop we'd organised hasn't turned up. Can we pick something up in an hour? No problem.
I was going to say, I mean, we're almost neighbours. But we're perfectly located in the midst of loads of movie studios in this area. Everything from Pinewood to Leavesden.
100 metres from my house is the new Sky Studios Comcast, one of the biggest in Europe.
Yeah.
But we work with all different people. I've just delivered 2 backdrops to St Albans Museum for an installation they're putting in. They wanted one of a map of Asia. They wanted one of a shot of the outside of the museum taken from the turn of the century, a black and white image, and we did it all custom for them. So we're more than just the photography industry, but that is our bread and butter. The school market, the headshot market, the maternity market, newborn, family portraiture, fine art, fashion, boudoir. Those are the main things right now that photographers are buying our backdrops for. The only market that we don't really do well with is the Christmas and very themed backdrops, because people normally want to pay $50 and just throw it away at the end of the season. Our backdrops are a more premium product than that, so we don't sell a lot of them. But we have lots of designs, and people who want something more high end, of course they'll come to us.
Yeah. Is there one thing I've got to ask? Of course, we live in the age of AI. AI backdrops have become a thing. Do you see that as a particular threat to your backdrop business or not?
Well, there's been digital backdrops for years. So, and funnily you should say that, one of the brand new range signature collections we have is from Kinzer Studios. Now, Laura Kinzer, who's part of the headshot crew in the US, is a big headshot photographer. Her side hustle, or her side business, was selling digital backdrops of offices and outdoor bokeh scenes to photographers. But she still had customers saying, we want real backdrops. So we've actually partnered with her. I actually just sent her backdrops yesterday, I believe, or maybe the day before. And she now has her own range using the digital backdrops from her collection that I wanted to have, things that we didn't have already and things that I knew would translate well into our backdrops. And we've created a physical range of backdrops. It's just about giving people what they want and see immediately. Gary Hughes would tell you that. He can do 700 headshots in a day and the customer will get all that work that evening. Done. Yeah. Shot in camera perfectly on a great backdrop with the tether. I think he's his own software, etc. And straight off. There's no prep work. AI, of course, it's going to hit us all, but we're using it to our advantage. We're now designing backdrops better and quicker and more unique. Anything in my head, I can now have as a backdrop. I mean, anything. So the backdrop behind us is completely made into AI. So photographers have got to embrace rather than fear. If they're going to just live in fear all the time, now's the time to go and get a job or something, because AI is gonna affect. It's affected our editing. What's it done to our editing? It's made it quicker. Yeah.
What's this thing? What did I say? It's not AI that's going to take your job. It's the person using AI that's going to take your job.
Yeah.
Ultimately.
Yeah.
So what does your future look like? What does the future look like for Click backdrops, for your marketing company, and for the studio?
Click backdrops, well, first of all, the studio is the least priority of my businesses, because the busier the marketing gets and the busier the backdrops get, the less time I have in the studio. We are open to the suggestion that if there is a photographer local to us that has a business, already an existing social portrait business in a studio that they might want to downsize or close down, we are possibly looking at bringing another 1 or 2 studio photography businesses into the Fresh Academy to run with us, or share our space and work with us, or bring them into the fold or something. So there might be something there. I don't want to build up a whole team of team fresh again and have all freelancers running the show again, because I haven't got the time to manage it. I have to concentrate on the marketing side of my business, which I'm putting a huge amount of my efforts in more recently than ever, and the backdrop business. The backdrop business, the ProFold backdrops, which are our foldable backdrops. That's the first time we now have foldable backdrops, which are machine washable, tumble dryable, made in the USA. So they're now delivered for free in the USA, because my biggest market is the USA. So they now don't have to pay any shipping from us. And we also make backdrops for the Westcott X-Fit, X-Drop system. We call those X-Fit. So those will all go online onto our website in the next week to 10 days. That will be a huge push for us online. We've been creating content for it for 3 months. So there'll be a lot of content being flooded onto the market. We believe that will see a big growth to our market share in the US, because we'll be making now every part of the market. You'll have your high-end canvas-like backdrops, which we call Pro Fabric. You'll have your lower-end foldable products, which are a cheaper price point. I mean, literally from $100, including delivery. And then we have that mid-market of the vinyls and the other stuff as well that we do. So that will be the big push for clip backdrops. Tons of new, I think there's 300 new designs launching this month alone, because we've just been storing them up. We've got so many. And obviously, as we touched upon earlier, the baby data, maternity data for the US photographer. That's going to be huge. For the people that get it and aren't so much on their high horse that they just refuse to do anything for free, you know, it's going to be a game changer for that market, a complete and utter game changer. It's almost like the pyramid things. For the ones who get in right at the beginning and secure their zip codes first, they're the ones that are going to do best. Because there'll always be zip codes that nobody wants, and there'll be zip codes that 50 photographers want. Sure. Especially in some of the wealthier areas. For any photographer out there that doesn't believe that free shoots work, my company has generated over £300 million. That's over $500 million for photographers in the UK alone, by giving away a free shoot with a free print. And that excludes the baby data, which we've been doing for 12 years. So it's probably nearly $1 billion in sales. Free shoots work as long as you give the customer that perfect experience and you treat them like a paying customer. Because if we don't have them in front of our camera, we have no opportunity to sell to them.
Yeah, you know. And I mean, that's an interesting concept, because you're not making money on the shoot, but you're making money on the after sales.
Of course. Yeah. We've supported the whole business. If my company has generated in the UK in the last 30 years over £300 million, that's a hell of a lot of albums that have sold for our friends at Loxley or Graphy or Digital Lab or One Vision or whatever. Framed portraits, frames, albums, a ton of new equipment that's been sold, camera companies, lighting companies, because those photographers are going through their gear quicker, they're investing more into packages, you know, and we work with studios of all sizes. It could be someone who just works from a lovely home studio, or it could be a high street studio with 30 staff. We work with all different studios. One of the unique things about us is we are snobs as well. We are fussy. No studio can join any of our marketing groups, the UK or the US, unless I've checked them out and I've checked their work and I've looked at their social medias, checked their reviews, made sure they're good enough to fit the brand name that they will trade under. Because that way, when we promote a product or a set of images online to promote the offer, every photographer within the group can achieve at least that level of photography. That way, we're always GDPR compliant, because the promotion's real, the imagery is real, and we have to give somebody a carrot to bring them into the studio. Once they're in there with their one little free print, if you shoot correctly and you know what you're doing and you're schmoozing the customer all the way through, we all know the majority of people are going to buy more. There'll always be some that don't, but we've also had, I mean, we had one customer here that I think one of the biggest portrait sales we've had here was ended up being £7,200, so about $10,000. So by anybody's standards, that's a good sale. And that was from a $20 gift package bought online for Bump to Baby. You know, and they came in and they just spent our biggest packages and they bought 3 of them. You know, one for the baby shoot and then 2 for the family shoot. Because they had so many images, one package wasn't big enough for it. Yeah. So we went for 2. So you will always get your nuggets, and you will always get the people come take the free print and go, and you say no problem. They might recommend you to a fabulous customer.
Yeah, the thing I like particularly, about the system as a whole is the way that it uplifts the whole industry. Because
Absolutely.
it's beneficial for the photographer. It's beneficial for the guys that make the frames, the albums. There's a whole industry that benefits from it in the end, which is just can only benefit everyone.
And also the consumer. So
Exactly.
we are also giving the consumer a reputable, vetted studio to go to, rather than someone that he or she just finds online, doesn't know who they're getting a shoot with, don't know where they're going to end up. By being promoted on Your Baby Club's website, that studio is automatically endorsed by association. Right? Their name is not mentioned. So any marketing they're already doing or not doing, they might be really high profile. We get some people come to us, especially when we were in the hair industry, so high profile, but still need more business, but can't do all the offers because they're too high profile. And they come to us and say, look, we'll join. No one can know we're a member. It is what it is. Unless you are fully booked or working at the capacity you want to work at, then you need to look at other revenues to bring it in. You cannot rely just on the meta world, because all they need to do is change their algorithm again and tweak it again, and your leads are going to fall through the floor. We've had a studio in the UK that was so red hot at her Facebook marketing, she actually was paid to do it for 2 or 3 other studios, was heavily reliant on it, had her account hacked, marketing stops.
Yeah.
Have to start the whole thing from scratch. So,
And it brings us back to the question of diversification. Originally it's just as true in marketing. Yeah.
You have to. With marketing, you need normally 10 funnels of new inquiries. Past customers could be one, advertising could be one, PPC, SEO, exhibitions, vouchers with local suppliers or shops and things, a group like myself. You need 10 revenue streams to fill a business. Even if you want 2 or 3 premium clients a week, and that's all you're going for, you have to have a big net to find those people. I've always preferred working with the middle market to the very high end. I just find the majority of the time they're easier to deal with, they're more appreciative, they're nicer to me personally. And we're still in our studio with our free customers, we're still hitting a £650 average. That's nearly a $900 average. And these aren't 5-hour shoots. These are 1 hour shoot, 30 or 40 minute viewing. So a lot of photographers, and I don't want to diverse into a sales podcast, but a lot of photographers talk about average sales, but there's no such thing really as average sales. You have to look at average per hour.
Yeah.
Because if you're a photographer and you do a 3,000, my average sale is $3,000, £3,000, but that includes 3 shoots or a 4-hour shoot, a 2-hour consultation, then you spend 2 hours editing all the images before the viewing, then a 2-hour viewing. So you're spending, say, 8 hours to get a $3,000 sale, opposed to my 1 hour 45 minutes to do a $900 sale. Do the maths.
Yeah.
Why shouldn't photography be put into that context like accountants are, lawyers are, architects are, it's all per hour. Photographers just live on this, my average sale is this. But how long are you spending on that average sale? And then what most photographers forget is all the marketing they've done to get the customer.
Yeah, absolutely.
If they're part of my group, they do none. The leads will just pop into their email with an annoying email that goes, whoop, whoop, you've got a new prospect lead from your local area who's ticked a promotion saying, I want or I'm interested in having a maternity shoot or a family or a baby shoot. All you've got to do is pick up the phone and say, hi, Janet, it's John. Let's get you booked in. Nothing more to it than that.
What would you say to people who say, and I hear this all the time, it's like you have to specialize, you have to niche down and just do that one thing really well. What would you say to people like that?
So our friend at Future Photography, and I don't know if I can swear on here, but his original title for his talk at Click Live Expo last year was Fuck the Niche. Because he built a portrait business during the pandemic in Texas from $0 to $500,000 revenue within a year. Because he did everything. If you look at their social media, 1 minute it's a newborn, the next minute it's a graduation, the next minute it's a communion, the next minute it's a wedding, the next minute it's a headshot, the next minute it's a family shot, then it's a party, then they do everything. Unless you are the highest level of your game, where you are literally shooting boudoirs as if they were in Tatler magazine or GQ or FHM or Vogue, and that's the level you are, that you are so high profile that you will just get people coming to you from all over your country and beyond, and they're paying thousands to be photographed by you, then great, have a niche. But if you're sitting in a studio, then you're paying rent and you're paying electricity and you're paying insurance, and you're only working 2 days or 3 days a week shooting, then why wouldn't you do anything to get the other 4 days filled in? So, it makes no sense to me.
Yeah. Is that something, would you say that's something that's sort of changed because, the landscape's changed, the conditions have changed, or is it something that's always been true and it's just been misconceptions around that?
Well, the whole portrait industry with the cost of living crisis anywhere in the world is going to hit the photography industry hard because we are a luxury item. No one is going to put having a family portrait session, spending £1,000 above going on a family holiday.
Sure.
So if one's got to give, and we've had it all the time. We suffer in July normally in sales in the studio. People are saying, I've just finished paying for my holiday. Yeah. Or I'm preparing for 6 weeks of no school and having to take children out all the time and even take them to McDonald's 3-4 times a week. Whatever is a lot of money. So we have to be very thankful for the customers that spend, and we have to just fill the studio with what pays the bills. I'm not a snob. Okay, I could very easily turn around and say, I don't do promotional clients. I'm only going to do paying clients and everything. Funny thing is, we had a paying client 2 weeks ago in the studio. They bought the package on our website for £100, so $135, just for the sitting. And they spent an additional $795. So totally it was $895. Isn't it enough the same average of all my promotional customers?
Yeah.
It makes no difference how they get in front of the camera. It's what happens when they're in front of the camera. That's the thing. AI cannot replace the experience and the emotion we bring out of a family. Only a human can do that. I think it's going to be many, many, many years before you have a robot taking pictures of a family that will get the expressions and have that relationship with that family that a human will get. So, and I believe the same with AI and backdrops. Why would you want to have a family shoot in front of a green screen? Oh, don't worry, we're going to put a fabulous backdrop in there. You'll love it. Trust me, it's going to be gorgeous. My customers love coming in here. They see all these backdrops and they go, oh my God, I've got so much choice. Oh, I've got a dress that will go with that. I've got a jumper that will go with this. They see that I'm making an effort by putting in crates and ladders and boxes and suitcases. Or I've got these necklaces and these sunglasses. It's real. We live in an experience. I'll diversify for 2 seconds, but it's quite interesting. I've never read a book in my life, ever. My dyslexia, I just can't be doing with books. And I was reading this article once in bed for quite a while, and my wife said, what are you doing? She was getting suspicious because I don't read. I've never read. I think half of Alice in Wonderland at school. I said, I'm reading this guy called Duncan Wardle. He was the director of innovation at Disney for 20 or 30 years. The guy, everything he was writing about his Imaginarium marketing thing that he does and these talks and things was relating exactly to my business. He was talking about how Starbucks changed having coffee to the experience of having coffee, which was from the TV program Friends, is what sparked off this whole coffee culture, where you go into you're not just buying a coffee, you're sitting down with settees and you're having chats, you could plug your phone in. Apple did it with their stores as well. You can go in there, they're teaching you how to use things. You've got the tech bars, you can go and play with all the gadgets. And he said in this thing I was reading, it's all about experiences. And then I read on there, online, that he's doing a world tour, and I've never been to a seminar teaching me things. I've hosted tons, I've talked at tons, but I've never been to one as a guest. And I saw, first one was in Toronto, I thought, bit far from London. Second one was in, I don't know, New York or somewhere. He's a Scottish guy, lives in America. And then the next one was literally 20 minutes from me in London. And I thought, you know what? I think it was £100 or two. I can't even remember. I said, I'm booking that. She goes, really? I said, who are you going to go with? I'm going on my own. It was incredible. Everything he talked about was how the only businesses that are going to come out of it stronger are the people that offer an experience. And that's exactly what portrait photographers do. You know, those photographers who've got the give of the gab and they're personable and they're friendly, to me, will normally have a better business than someone who might be technically perfect but can't communicate, or is so arrogant at their level of photography they shoot at that they would never give a discount. I would never give a deal on this. People want deals and discounts at the moment, however wealthy they are, because they want to feel special.
And photography is a people business. It's people
100%.
Photographing people. And ultimately, this is the thing I think a lot of the time I come across, when I have conversations with people, tend to forget that, even when you talk to somebody on the other side of a computer, still a human being sitting there. And it's those communication skills, these interhuman skills that are super important. And photography is really no different from that.
100%.
Unless you shoot products, in which case.
Products is one of the few things I don't shoot.
Yeah.
I've never professed to be a technically perfect photographer. Okay, I remember a funny story. Gary designed a new range of backdrops called Center Stacks and Stacked Masters, where it's one backdrop with another backdrop layered over the top. Okay, and has a drop shadow in there. Yeah. So we put the backdrop up on the weekend. I was shooting that weekend. First shoot with the backdrop, customer spends £900. Now, if I was a paying customer that bought that backdrop for £550, that first customer, the first shoot's covered the product, okay? And I've got, look, Gary, look, isn't that great? He goes, no. I said, why not? I said, brilliant, they spent £900. He goes, you lit it from the wrong side. No, I didn't, because look at the way the hair is. He goes, yeah, but you've lit it from this side and the drop shadow's from that side. I went, oh yeah, but the customer didn't notice. So I cock up on those sorts of things, but I've never had a customer in my career come out of the studio and go, that was boring.
Yeah. Well, see, I mean, this is the thing. I made the mistake in some ways during the pandemic when everything else sort of broke off, and photographing people at one point was downright illegal. I took on some jobs photographing products, and I hated it because you have nobody to talk to. There's no interaction going on. There's no conversation. You can't throw out a joke. There's no response, nothing. It's just a thing that just sits there. It drove me around the bend, and I've sworn to myself never to do that ever again.
It's tough.
Yeah.
It is, and it's a lot harder. You need to be, lighting point of view, you need to be on point. I mean, Gary did a picture on one of our new Pro Flats with a gin bottle. I think there's 4 or 5 lights used in the one shot. It's not me. I much prefer working with people. And not only that, I like going into the viewing room straight after and seeing them cry when they see the pictures and the price list. I like seeing the emotion that our images bring.
That's huge. Yeah.
I had a customer today text me, the one to order a wall product from a function I did for them in 2007. Unfortunately, we can't make that same product anymore, but they're still thinking about the imagery we did, nearly 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And that's what we are doing. Let's go back to basics. What is a social photographer? We are creating the memories for tomorrow. That's what we're doing. The long and short of it, people will invest in it if we sell the sizzle and we go in the right way. If we give them lots of choice, every shoot we do in the studio is a minimum of 3 to 4 backdrop changes, not one. So even if they come in and they say, just the family of 4 of us, don't try and break up that group. You're not going to convince me. I don't want to be pressure sold. I don't want kids individually. We've got school pictures, which I don't even compare myself to, but they say just the family shot. I said, no problem. You're just going to get the family shot. Half length, full length, 3/4 length, looking at the camera, looking away, looking at each other, smiling, serious, colour, black and white, 4 or 5 backdrops. I can create 20 different portraits from just the family shot in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
That shoot will be 20 minutes. So if they spend £400 or £500, that's equivalent of $1,200-1,500 per hour. So it is all about, you're completely right, our business is a people business. You know, the amount of expos I go to, like you walk past a booth and the two people who are working on that booth are just sitting behind a table on their phones. I cringe. Whoever I'm with looks at me and says, you're cringing. You're going to say, well, of course I am, because they've paid thousands of dollars to be at this show. Get off your arse. I'm normally standing up at the booth and everyone that walks past, hello, how are you? And if they ignore me, I say, have a nice day. The next person, hello, how? It's what we do.
Yeah.
That's just how it is.
Yeah. And your success obviously speaks for that, because that's, you know.
Yeah, well, success is measured in lots of different ways. Am I financially successful? No, because every penny I've ever had goes back into growing the business. And but the success, in my opinion, is I've had a job for 30 years and I never feel like I've ever done a day's work.
Yeah.
Because I love what I do. For me, actually, and even though my family have always not appreciated this thing, but they understand, if I actually go away for a vacation for a week, I'll have a fabulous time with friends, family, my kids when they were younger, etc. But I still miss being at work because it's not work. I love what I do.
Yeah, so I have the exact same discussions with my wife, actually, who's a teacher, and she loves teaching. But, you know, it's a job, and sometimes you come home and you've just had enough of dealing with children all day. And in her spare time, she likes to do other things because she has hobbies, so to say. I don't have any hobbies. I love what I do. I do the same thing at any hour, at any time during the day, 7 days a week, you know, because I just love doing it. And to me, it's not work. And that's why I can do it 24/7. What I want to ask you is, with all of your, you know, business experience and your years in setting up a range of different businesses, what was your biggest mistake in business that you've learned from the most?
Well, there's two. First of all, the success for me came too quickly. So literally at the age of 20, when I could barely pee straight, the marketing side of the business exploded and I was reckless with the expenditure. As a salesperson, all I was doing was looking forward at bringing the sales in. I had no experience of what the back end part of the business was, providing for tax, providing for what happens if we have 3 bad months. Because when you're in your 20s, and I keep telling this to one of my sons in specific, you feel like you're impregnable. Nothing can touch you. You are the bee's knees. It will not end the run. And it did. And it came tumbling down as quick as it was built. So the big mistake was not being much more careful on the back end of my business. Knowing my costs, knowing what everything was costing me, investing when the times were big. Should have heavily invested in, you know, into property and other things as well. I didn't. Everything went into the business. And the second thing is not, what did you say, what have I learned or regret or?
Yeah, what was so for, you know, a mistake that has taught you?
Yeah, I've been too trusting.
Yeah.
That's my biggest thing. I've put my heart on my arm with too many people and too many members of my inner circle over the years. I've just trusted too much, and too many times those people have come back to either use or abuse the trust and generosity that I've given them. So moving forward, I'm trying to toughen up. It's hard when you're, you know, the person I am, but try to toughen up to be a little bit more shrewd on who I let in and fight. So that's basically it. You know, look after the pennies and not be as trusting, you know, and a bit more careful on who you tell what to. Too many people are in business just for themselves. It's not what I've tried. I've always had the ethos, I live to give. So I've always given more than I expect to receive, if that makes sense. That could be for gifts, it could be for anything. I've always paid my staff the maximum I can afford, not the minimum I can get away with. You know, they've always been fed before me. You know, there's too many. I mean, I read all the time in the news, this company's got rid of thousands of people, but they take millions of bonuses and things. You know, that's just the corporate world. And we're not corporate. We come across as a bigger company than we are. We're a very modest, small company, but with quite a big footprint in the industry in quite a lot of countries. I think the nicest thing I have, I'm certainly not one of the most well-known people in the industry by an Olympic mile. But it is lovely having people in all different countries that know what we're doing, especially when there's a backdrop I see being used in New Zealand or Hawaii or, you know, in Africa or somewhere. You know, we had Roger Federer being interviewed on one of our backdrops in India, you know, something. It just gives a lovely little buzz. But that's it. Just work hard and look after people. You know, that's my advice from a business point of view, is just look after people, you know, and that goes with anyone. You know, if someone gives us equipment like Westcott, just kindly giving us some of these booms, we tag them in everything. We're sponsored by Fujifilm, so everything we do is using their equipment and promoting them and tagging them. But, you know, we've given backdrops to people in the past and they don't even say thank you when they receive them. Never see a sample image. You know, so we're a bit more shrewd with these things now. You know, you've got to give a little bit if you want to get something as well.
I think that's a massive lesson, just generally. I think generally in life, not only in business, you know, give more than you ask to receive, I think.
Correct.
What would be your one tip for people, for young photographers out there in 2025 now, who may be watching this or listening to this on, on Apple Podcasts? And by the way, if you're not watching this on YouTube, there is a fully fledged version of this over on YouTube in full Technicolor. Go and hit that up, because there is a lot of B-roll of this beautiful studio on there as well. So if you want to have a look around and see what the studio is really like, have a close-up look at some of the backdrops and how things work in here, I highly recommend you check out the version on YouTube. So go and do that. But what would be your tip to a young photographer starting in 2025 when the whole world around him says photography is dead, you know, everybody's got an iPhone, it doesn't have a future? What would you say?
Don't go into the photography industry. No, I'm only kidding. You've got to work hard at it. I've always believed that success is built up of three things. 50% of it is confidence, 25% is image, how you appear, that could be your website, your blog these days, or your personal image, and 25% is knowledge. I've never been one to say you have to do a 3-year degree to become a photographer, because I and some of the best photographers I know in the world have no qualifications whatsoever other than industry qualifications. But what frustrates me the most over the last few years, when we've employed young photographers, as you said, in the 20s, they've had this incredible studio to work in. I can count on my hand, and I've employed probably 20 photographers, maybe more, in this building. I can count on my hands the amount of times one of those photographers has said to me, Charlie, on my day off, do you mind if I use the studio? I've just got this idea. They don't. You can't treat photography as a job.
Yeah.
Because it's not a job. It has to be a passion. If it's a job, then go and take product shots for a living. Well, the one thing you said you don't want to do. You know, go and photograph nuts and bolts in a factory all day long and get, minimum wage. You have to practice and keep developing yourself. Not a lot of people get educated enough, especially in the UK, which is why I love so much of the US market, because they're constantly learning and striving. I mean, one thing we haven't touched on at all is Click Live Light. So again, I don't know when this airs, but September the 30th, we have our own expo in the UK. 350 photographers, mainly in the portrait world. And we've got Therese Aspeland and Ivan Durand, one coming from Sweden, one from California. Some of the most technically brilliant photographers of our time doing 2.5 and 3 hour masterclasses at this event. I cannot believe they didn't sell out the day they were launched. But in the end, we're trying to sell tickets. And we're talking about minimal amount of money. 2 prints in your studio would cover the cost of the course. It's £149 for, these hands-on masterclasses with these multi-award-winning, top of their game experts. But a lot of photographers in the UK think we know it all.
Yeah.
So my logic is, if you want to make more money in photography, be a better photographer. If you want to be a better photographer, you have to practice more, and you've got to learn from people better than yourself. It's very simple.
Absolutely. And education always wins. Yeah.
Always, always, always get educated. So for the younger generation, keep promoting yourself. Don't give up. If you're going to look for a job and someone says no, go back a couple of months later. That's what I did. When I originally landed this job in this luxury studio, The first time I asked him for a job, he actually said no because he didn't have the studio. And a year later, when I approached him again, he'd opened the studio. And if you want to know how really it all started, when I was 9 and I met a photographer called Richard Szymanski, and I grabbed him at my brother's party that he was photographed, grabbed him by his trouser leg and said, Richard, yes, Charlie, I want to be a photographer like you. Will you give me a job? Okay, Charlie. 5 years later, when I was 13 at my party that he was photographing, Richard, I want to be a photographer. Yeah, okay. When I was 16 or 15 and a half, before I left school, at that point I had my own camera, I had my own darkroom. I was already heavily invested in it. I was doing jobs. My mum said, oh, Richard will give you a job. He had 3 studios at the time, very high profile. And we went to Richard and I had an interview with my mum before I'd left secondary school. And he said, love Charlie, love his enthusiasm. He didn't give me the job. Why? Because he thought within 2 minutes I'd want to take over his whole business. If we roll forward 5 years, Richard and I had 2 studios in partnership together. It's persistence.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're still working together 36 years from that interview. We're still doing business together. Because I didn't give up.
And I think that's the lesson I'm trying to teach my children, is that persistency and consistency always win in the end.
Unfortunately, a lot of people are the young, and I feel so old when I keep saying the younger generation, they don't know what hard work is. They physically do not know, and I'm not saying this in a horrible way, there's probably plenty of them that work incredibly well, and there's probably tens of thousands of 19 and 20-year-olds far more successful than me in the tech world or the online world that are making millions, and they put me to shame in a business capacity. But a lot of the younger generation do not know what hard work is. You know, I remember doing 3 weddings a week, some of them going on till 4 o'clock in the morning, when my hands would hurt for 5-6 days after from, you know, repetitive stress industry of holding the camera for so many hours. You know, when I was running that studio in Northwest London, doing all his marketing, I owned and helped someone set up a cleaning business. And for a year, I would be working in the studio 5 days a week, doing my own functions 2 days a week, and cleaning houses and toilets and bathrooms with this guy, and doing patios and things, because that's how I funded the lifestyle that I wanted. But this day and age, they expect it on a plate in a cost of living world, which is far higher. So I pity the younger generation having to get on the property ladder and getting a car and paying insurance, which is thousands. But on the flip side, just work harder. You know, one of my sons working 70 plus hours a week to hit his dreams. Good luck to him. That's what it takes.
Yeah.
You know, it's not going to be easy. This photography industry, my big lesson, photography is not a get-rich-quick scheme. It's for people who want to have an income out of their passion.
Yeah. Neither is podcasting, incidentally.
No, I can imagine.
Charlie, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
You're an absolute diamond in this industry, and we're lucky to have you. So thank you so much.
Can I just say one little thing as well? Because I know you talked about your YouTube channel. Mm-hmm. To those of you who are not going to go on the YouTube, I look a little bit a cross between Brad Pitt with a bit of Jason Statham. For those of you who wanted to see that and went to the YouTube, sorry to disappoint. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Okay, folks, that's it for today. What an incredible conversation with Charlie. So many insights into the studio photography business and the backdrop industry. I hope this episode has given you plenty of ideas on how to grow your own photography brand and maybe even branch out into new opportunities. And if you haven't already, head over to camerashakepodcast.com and sign up for our newsletter. You'll get the latest news, photography tips, and early access to episodes straight to your inbox. Definitely worth it if you want to stay ahead of the game. As always, if you enjoy our content, consider supporting us on buymeacoffee.com/camerashake. It really does help us keep bringing you great interviews like this one. And for those listening on audio, did you know there's a full video version over on YouTube with behind-the-scenes footage and plenty of visuals? Just head over to YouTube, search for Camera Shake Podcast, and you'll find all past episodes there. If you're already on YouTube, do us a favor, hit that like button, drop a comment, subscribe, and share these episodes with a friend. Your engagement helps us reach photographers all over the world. Thank you so much for tuning in. And remember, a brand new episode drops every Thursday. So make sure you mark that in your calendars. Until next time, keep shaking things up in the world of photography. See you next Thursday.